Joining me now from Southern California, attorney and vice chair of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, Marc Little. Marc, when we look at these actions taken by Devin Nunez and others, this is the private sector taking on the private sector, and I've talked about this on the program before, and that is where it belongs, right? Private sector versus private sector, instead of necessarily looping in the government in a situation like this?
You're absolutely right, Graham. First and foremost, we've got the public square being redefined, and we've got private companies now controlling what we now call the digital public square. There's no role for a government here. There's a First Amendment claim in this particular lawsuit, but we all know that government actors are not involved here, and that's what the Constitution intends to protect, free speech from government actors. That just doesn't exist in this case.
And we also, I make the point that these are private entities, and we don't have to be on Twitter or on Facebook or use Google. We have a choice to just walk away, and some people do. Now, the Nunez case is interesting to me because it seems like the burden of proof for his winning his lawsuit against Twitter is rather high. It's kind of tough. And I'm going to read part of the complaint to you. As part of its agenda to squelch Nunez's voice, cause him extreme pain and suffering, influence the 2018 congressional election and distract and intimidate and interfere with Nunez's investigation into corruption and Russian involvement in the 2000 presidential election, Twitter did absolutely nothing. So two things here. Number one, I guess you have to prove, if you're Nunez, that he was intentionally targeted to do nothing, if you will. And number two, that Twitter is somehow negligent. Let's tackle the first one. Intentionally targeted. It's a tough one. I guess under discovery, you would take depositions and you would go after their algorithms, I guess, to somehow prove there was some sort of nefarious work behind the scenes?
Well, Representative Nunez has a challenge. And again, I'm glad that he brought the lawsuit because it's bringing this discussion. But as a public figure, whether he's targeted or not is really not the issue. He has a very high standard to prove that they knew that the statements that were made were false and that they were distributed to third parties. It's called actual malice under the New York Times versus Sullivan case. And so he's got a very high hurdle to overcome in order to sustain a defamation claim. His second problem, though, Graham, is the Communications Decency Act, Section 230. It absolutely is a shield for Twitter because it says that they cannot be held liable for the content of third parties that are using their site. And so that's very difficult. I think in this case, though, if he can demonstrate that because of the use of their algorithms, they became publishers with editorial control, there might be an opportunity for him to overcome his hurdles.
And that's the negligence part that you kind of swerved into with the Communications Decency Act. The federal statute essentially protects Twitter in the Decency Act that exists on the books right now, Section 230 that you quoted there. Social media companies should not be, quote, treated as the publisher or speaker of the content. But I guess the question would be, how exactly do you police 300 million users on Twitter? It seems to be impossible, whether you've got these sophisticated algorithms and the most brilliant people on your staff or not.
Well, I think the short answer, Graham, is that you can't. And people like me who are banned regularly, I think the answer, unfortunately, is the free market. I think we have to respond and create a place where others, conservatives, as I am, can have the opportunity to have their voice. The public square no longer is available to everyone equally, and that is unfortunate.
Now, the Covington case seems to have more legal clarity to me. There are many facets of it, and obviously they're suing for a lot of money as well. They're taking on the Washington Post and CNN, but both of these entities, first of all, Mr. Sandman and the other kids at Covington, they're not public figures, as you pointed out, Devin Nunez, these kids are not. That's number one. And number two, that these entities have a history of attacking not only the President of the United States, but anybody associated with the President of the United States.
I'm so glad that Linwood is bringing this lawsuit on behalf of Mr. Sandman. They're going to prevail. Mr. Sandman is a private individual. The standard is simply negligence. They simply have to prove that the statements were false. And if any of these entities just looked at the video that existed, they would have known that what they were purporting and what they were indicating was simply false. So Mr. Sandman is going to prevail, I predict.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One American News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One American News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.